In a deeply unsettling move, the current Vice President of the United States, apparently with little else demanding his time, stepped in as guest host of the Charlie Kirk podcast. Joined by Deputy White House Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, he used the platform to launch harsh attacks on Democrats and the political left, framing the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk as justification for sweeping plans to target opponents with state power. The whole display was disturbing and cynical. Before I break this down further, if you find value in this video, please take a moment to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Now, when I saw that J.D. Vance, the sitting vice president, was going to step in as host, I was struck by how unusual and inappropriate it felt. I remembered when Pete Buttigieg, before he held office, once guest hosted a late-night show, something that made sense at the time. But here, in the wake of a shocking act of political violence, J.D. Vance has chosen to use the moment not to call for unity, but to push a narrative blaming Democrats and the left, presenting them as the source of violence and suggesting they should be confronted with the power of the state. Let me show you 2 clips, beginning with this one taken from Vance's opening remarks.
Of course, we have to make sure that the killer is brought to justice, and importantly, we have to talk about this incredibly destructive movement of left-wing extremism that has grown up over the last few years, and I believe is part of the reason why Charlie was killed by an assassin's bullet. We're going to talk about how to dismantle that and how to bring real unity that can only come when we tell the truth, and everybody knows that they can speak their mind about the issues of the day without being cut down by a murderer's gun.
It's dishonest to claim, as some do, that political violence comes only from the left. Of course, left-wing violence exists and should be condemned. But to insist it's the exclusive source of danger is misleading and reckless. Recent years have seen multiple high-profile attacks on Democratic figures, including the assault on Paul Pelosi and other politically motivated shootings that targeted lawmakers. Independent research and government reporting also show that right-wing violence has been a major and recurring problem. You don't need to argue which side is worse to recognize that portraying one side as solely responsible is irresponsible and dangerous. Listen to the language being used: calls to dismantle opponents, followed by claims about unity. Read more like threats than reconciliation. True unity isn't built by crushing dissent. It's built by protecting everyone from violence and upholding democratic norms. If the stated aim is to reduce political violence across the board, that's a message worth supporting. But when powerful officials use selective rhetoric and insinuation to demonize opponents, the effect is sinister. Now, here's the Deputy White House Chief of Staff speaking in more detail.
The last message that Charlie sent me was, I think it was just the day before we lost him, which was that we need to have an organized strategy to go after the left-wing organizations that are promoting violence in this country. And I will write those words onto my heart and I will carry them out. The people ask me,
hold up. Imagine how easily this could be played 2 ways. If a Democratic president wanted to use political violence as a pretext, think back to past attacks from the Giffords shooting onward, they could just as easily claim sweeping powers are necessary to protect the public. That kind of opportunism is cynical political theater. It can win headlines and build leverage, but it corrodes democratic norms. Supporters of Charlie Kirk argue his legacy is free and fair debate. But using state power to silence opponents would be the opposite of that. I condemn the violence against him, yet it's worth remembering Kirk himself often sided with measures that limited speech when they suited his politics. So even if senior aides privately discussed using this moment to consolidate control, they shouldn't. Creating a precedent where the state can crush dissent risks being turned against anyone later. And that hypocrisy is what makes this so dangerous. Now let's hear more from the deputy White House aide.
What emotions I'm feeling right now, this is something people say, I mean, you kind of know the answer. There's incredible sadness, but there's incredible anger. And the thing about anger is that unfocused anger or blind rage is not a productive emotion.
Right.
But focused anger, righteous anger, directed for a just cause is one of the most important agents of change in human history.
Charlie showed that. Amen.
And we are going to channel all of the anger that we have over the organized campaign that led to this assassination to uproot and dismantle these terrorist networks. So let me explain a little bit what that means. So,
You've got 30 seconds, so be quick, Stephen.
The organized doxing campaigns, the organized riots, the organized street violence, the organized campaigns of dehumanization, vilification, posting people's addresses, combining that with messaging that's designed to trigger and incite violence, and the actual organized cells that carry out and facilitate the violence, it is a vast domestic terror movement. And with God as my witness, we are going to use every resource we have at the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks and make America safe again for the American people. It will happen, and we will do it in Charlie's name.
The problem is, even if we take what he says at face value, which we shouldn't because they're liars, what's he mean by incite violence? Again, I mean, just imagine. I want you guys to imagine that in the aftermath of January 6th, President Biden says, hey, listen, it's not enough to just go after the perpetrators of January, the actual insurrectionists who had their feet on the ground in the Capitol. It's not even enough to go after those who explicitly organized the insurrection, okay? Like Trump, for example, the people who set it up. But really, anybody who incited it, like anybody who denied the election, didn't you guys kind of incite the January 6th insurrection? I mean, the election was won fair and square. You denied the reality in order to advance a nefarious political agenda, and then the insurrection happened. People were injured, cops were beaten, people died that day, and then in conjunction with the day it's not, I mean, imagine Biden saying something like that. How would Stephen Miller have reacted? He'd have been panicked. He'd have been upset. He would have been like, that's getting really overbroad, right? That's the problem with this. Stephen Miller is not known for his, restraint, his moderation. Pretty freaking ruthless. And so what's he mean by radical left? We've criticized Charlie Kirk, criticized the Trump administration. Sure, we've condemned the political violence. We condemn the assassination of Trump or of Kirk, and the assassination attempts against Trump. Are we radical like organizations? Is Midas Touch MSNBC because Trump has repeatedly threatened to go after MSNBC? What is it? And we also know that the FBI is reportedly investigating social media posts hinting at Charlie Kirk assassination before it happened. What does that mean? Does that mean incendiary rhetoric? Do they believe it's a conspiracy? Do they have any evidence it's a conspiracy? And the reason I ask, and I'm so skeptical, is as we'll probably discuss in a separate video. Right now, there's a large cancel culture push among some MAGA supporters and a number of the administration's allies to identify and pressure people who criticize Charlie Kirk. In some cases, pushing to expose their personal information or to contact their employers. That goes beyond the grotesque act of celebrating a murder. Even people who simply said, "I'm not a fan, I'm sorry this happened," are being targeted. Setting free speech arguments aside, this pattern looks less like a campaign to reduce violence and more like an effort to neutralize political opponents using whatever leverage is available. That's exactly why I don't trust this administration to handle the response responsibly, and you shouldn't either. Using a tragedy as cover to consolidate power or punish critics risks setting a precedent that could be turned against anyone. And it's an alarming, authoritarian turn. Call it out loudly. This is dangerous. disturbing behavior, and it deserves our attention. Tell me what you think in the comments. And if you stuck around at the end, you can drop the blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I will see you soon.